logic and emotions. Most people perceive themselves as logical, analytical, intelligent beings with the capacity to reason or use reason as the means to decide which actions they should do. We think we are controlled by logic, left hemisphere, frontal cortex in our brains. That's actually way far from true. You see, modern brain scientists have proven that your subconscious parts, meaning your primal brain, is approximately 80 million times more important in regards to the decision-making processes we do as human beings as the conscious mind, meaning your thoughts or your reasoning. One of the experiments scientists used to deduct that fact was to observe using EEG people who were confronted with the decision, pressing a green or red button when they saw red or green color on some screen. Immediately, once they had decided which color they were seeing, or some other decision-making processes which they could physically map to some specific part of the brain, and they would see the same brain surface light up on EEG much earlier, way before the human being had decided what action consciously to take. And there's a whole range of experiments that basically proves that human beings aren't logical beings. We are way far from logical, intelligent, sane people. You see, logic and emotions. Most people believe that they think, therefore they are. Well, doesn't ducks exist? What about this rock? Does it exist? Of course it does. But I believe most people would disagree with me if I told you that this rock is actually thinking. Still it exists. Now we human beings are basically complex rocks. Emerging complexity, creating the illusion of sentience and existence. When you realize that, you stop thinking and you start feeling, which is your true being. And that's why Buddhist traditions, sorry I have to play the Buddhist card here, refer to this as nirvana. Nirvana and nibbana, as it is called in Thai, actually means in water or in the river. And that's because emotions feels like you are inside of a river, because they constantly change. And you cannot control your emotions. That it's absolutely meaningless to even attempt at doing such a thing. However, what you can control is your environment. And your emotions are not an island. Meaning if you become really, really, really angry and you want to hit somebody in the face, the smartest thing to do is if you can somehow create some emergency thing in your brain and create this as almost an autonomous impulse reaction, that you leave the situation. Then you leaving the situation will change your environment. The most severe example I have of this is myself. When I was demonized by roughly 99.9999% of the Norwegian population, if I was to be consciously thinking about that all the time, then I would have been down there, literally in the river, and I do not mean nirvana. However, the way I taught myself to cope with that was that I started seeking more and more out in nature. Because regardless of how much the people of Norway hated me, the birds didn't care, right? The grass was still fresh, full of morning dew and comfortable to walk on without shoes. The trees, I could still hug a tree, which actually sounds ridiculous until you try it. But it's actually really, really cool. I could, sit and look at the crows. I could observe nature. And regardless of how demonized I was by the people of Norway, nature would never reject me. And slowly I started, and you might ask if this is a sane thing to do or not. I don't know. I feel that this largely saved my life. Slowly, as I started seeking more and more out in nature, I started anthropomorphizing Mother Earth. Call it Lovelace's Gaia theory. Call it whatever you wish, but I felt loved here. I felt loved there, underneath that tree. I felt loved by the birds and the crows in the tree. And I felt as if I belonged here. And by changing my environment to something that didn't judge me, something that accepted me the way I was, I changed my emotions. So you cannot stop a river from floating or stop your emotions. That's impossible. But you can divert a river to take a different path down the hill. You can move a river, and so on and so on. So even though you are a slave to your subconscious emotions, you can still, to some extent, change the way your subconsciousness behaves by making the right conscious decisions. And that's the relationship between logic and emotions. And this will probably sound really ridiculous for any person who has never experienced this himself, but I do not think. I literally mean that. This is becoming a cliche because I've said it so many times, so I realize it becomes almost like a cliche when I say it. But I actually realize what I say after I say it. which might explain some of my words, hopefully. And lots of other people have experienced the same things, or the same thing as I've done. Eckhart Tolle calls this the power of now. And I am in that thing, meaning in the river. And there's no way you can think yourself into the river, because it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. That's why Zen philosophy is important, because it does not comply to logic. And its purpose is to break your logic until you have no more logic left, and you're left with nothing but yourself.